Dave was the quintessential good guy of the village, kind-hearted, hard-working, and as dependable as an old ox. His remarkable woodworking skills made him a favorite among the locals. His wife, Heather, on the other hand, was the town's undeniable beauty, a woman who could light up any room she walked into. But Heather had one glaring flaw. She was a spender. Whether it was a necklace as thick as a tree branch or any luxury that caught her eye, she'd buy it without a second thought. She never hesitated to go all out on herself. Every time she stepped out, she dressed to the nines, looking like a high society socialite. In stark contrast, Dave was an aging, weathered man whose appearance reflected years of hard work and sacrifice. Yet, this hopeless romantic never once complained. To keep his wife happy, he willingly worked himself to the bone, taking on the weight of their life like a loyal dog. Life, however, as a way of throwing unexpected curveballs. One day, Dave's assistant didn't show up for work, leaving him shorthanded. Left with no other choice, he pleaded with Heather to help him cut down a tree. After half a day of convincing, Heather finally gave in. But no one could have predicted how this seemingly simple task would turn their lives upside down. As the tree came crashing down, a branch got jammed in the pulley, making it impossible for Heather to control its direction. Heather, used to her campered lifestyle, had never faced anything like this before. Before she could react, the massive tree came down on her, crushing her arm. When Dave rushed over, he found Heather's arm pinned under the heavy trunk, blood gushing from the wound. Despite his desperate efforts to free her, the arm wouldn't budge. Heather's agonized screams filled the air, the pain unbearable. Fearing she would bleed to death, Dave made a gut-wrenching decision. Without hesitation, he grabbed an axe and severed his wife's arm. Ever since losing her arm, Heather felt like her entire world had collapsed. She was no longer the center of attention, the radiant village beauty everyone admired. The once confident and vibrant woman seemed to have vanished, replaced by someone who barely recognized herself. Even the children in the village began to look at her differently. The overwhelming sense of loss left Heather crying herself to sleep every night. Dave, deeply in love with her, saw her pain and felt it just as intensely. Determined to bring back the confidence and happiness that once defined her, he decided to craft her a prosthetic arm out of stainless steel. But when Heather saw the beautifully crafted arm, it wasn't enough for her. She wanted it made of gold. To fulfill her wish, Dave went to extraordinary lengths, even mortgaging their home to afford 3 gold bricks. With tireless effort and painstaking detail, Dave sculpted a stunning golden arm. When it was finally placed on Heather, she looked like a true queen. In that moment, the long-lost smile returned to her face. The self-doubt and sorrow melted away as she basked in the admiration of those who once pitied or judged her. The envious glances she received now mirrored her former glory. Heather, the dazzling beauty of the village, had reclaimed her throne. But the good times didn't last long. As life played another cruel trick on Heather, she fell ill, and the cause of her illness was metal poisoning, which had developed into a severe lung disease. The doctor warned her that if she didn't remove the golden arm, her health would deteriorate beyond repair. This news sent Heather into a panic. Without her golden arm, she felt she would no longer be the most beautiful woman, and in her mind, life wouldn't be worth living. Faced with a wife who valued her beauty more than life itself, Dave was powerless. As Heather's condition worsened, she came to terms with the fact that her time was running out. In her final days, she made one last request, that Dave buried her with the golden arm, so she could take it with her to the grave. Seeing the woman he loved in her last moments, Dave reluctantly agreed to her final wish. Soon after, Heather passed away. True to her wish, Dave buried her with the golden arm. After Heather's death, things took a turn for the worse. A severe economic depression hit the area, and people could no longer afford handmade furniture. Dave, once a prosperous man, now found himself struggling to get by. His life had become a constant series of failures, leaving him feeling like a walking corpse. Desperate to return to his former, modest life, Dave stared at a photo of his late wife and made a bold decision. The next moment, he went to the warehouse and grabbed a set of tools meant for digging graves. Without hesitation, Dave broke open Heather's coffin. As he looked at his decaying wife, he nearly wet himself. After all, it hadn't been long since she passed away, and here he was, about to break the promise he'd made to her. It felt eerie to go against a dead man's wishes, but when Dave thought about his empty stomach, his resolve grew stronger. Strangely, no matter how hard he tried, golden arm wouldn't come off. Furious, Dave grabbed an axe and swung it with all his might. Blood spurted everywhere, and with one swift chop, he finally freed the golden arm. Staring at the arm, which would secure his future, Dave couldn't help but smile. Dave scrambled out of the grave, panic-stricken, and soon made his way back home. But as soon as he arrived, he was met with an eerie, piercing sound. Stepping outside, a chilling wind began to howl around him. Just as he turned to head back inside, a blood-curdling scream pierced the air. Dave's face went pale with fear, and he rushed back into the house. At that very moment, all the doors and windows began to violently shake. To his horror, the photo of his wife fell to the floor. Despite his terror, Dave gathered his courage and picked up the shattered frame. But when he looked at it, his wife's image was gone. Then came another ghastly wail, making Dave's heart race even faster. Grabbing the golden arm, he dashed upstairs. When he looked back, he saw the door below had swung open by itself. Slowly, a ghostly figure began to emerge. In a blind panic, Dave ran back to his room. Within moments, strange noises started coming from the door. Terrified, he buried his head under the bed sheets, leaving just a small gap to peek through. It wasn't long before the ghostly figure stormed into the room. It was his wife. Only now, she was a specter, muttering, "You promised me." Seeing her so determined, Dave, desperate to save his own life, reluctantly handed over the golden arm. Once his wife had the arm in hand, she finally left the room, and Dave thought he had narrowly escaped death. However, just as he began to catch his breath, the next day, the villagers discovered Heather and Dave lying together in bed. The golden arm was still attached to Heather's hand, and the loving couple was tightly clasped in each other's arms. The kind-hearted villagers decided to rebury them, but Dave's death remains a mystery to this day. Since then, even though everyone knew where the golden arm was, no one dared to make a move for it. As time passed, Heather and Dave became an ancient legend,